Today's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Well, hello there, it's 6 o'clock, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking today. Now, inflation figures, you might have noticed that they're out again today. I've got to say, they are actually better than predicted. You wouldn't believe that, though, if you saw some of the headlines, but nonetheless, it was still 9%, which of course is not good. So let me ask you this. What do you want the government to do right now, in the here and now, to help you? And are you worried at the moment? I want to know all your thoughts on all those kind of things when it comes to money. Where are you right now? Also, Black Lives Matter. I mean, it's a phrase and a slogan that we're all familiar with by now, aren't we? This week, though, tough questions have been asked, how tens of millions of dollars that were supposed to be for the noble cause of fighting racism instead seem to have been spent on mansions and family members. Now, we all know that we need to end racism, but is the BLM way the right way? And £30 million has been given to councils to help people lose weight. Turns out, though, they only help 220 people keep the weight off by 5% of their body weight. That's what they managed to lose. So by my reckoning, that works out at about £136,000 per person to help them lose 5% of their body weight. What? I'm asking, is it really the government's responsibility to help you lose weight? All that to come, but first, the latest news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Labour Party has repeated its call for a windfall tax on energy companies to help tackle the rising cost of living on the day inflation hit a 40-year high. The Consumer Price Index rose to 9% in the year to April, up from 7% in March. During Prime Minister's questions, Boris Johnson promised to look at all measures available to help struggling families. But Sir Keir Starmer accused the government of inaction.
Whilst he dithers, British households are slapped with an extra £53 million on their energy bills every single day. Meanwhile, every single day, North Sea oil and gas giants rake in £32 million in unexpected profit.
We're already spending £22 billion. We're already helping people with the cost of living in any way that we can, Mr. Speaker. But the reason we can do that is because we took the tough decisions to get this country through COVID, to make sure that we came out of lockdown in the way that was necessary, and to have a strong economy.
Official figures show food prices are also going up across the UK. According to the Retail Price Index figures, overall prices rose by nearly 7%, with lamb and poultry up by 14% and 10% respectively. Some producers, like Premier Foods, which owns brands including Mr Kipling and Oxo, have warned that prices may still go up even further. The Prime Minister says he was shocked to learn that a Conservative MP had been arrested, having been accused of rape and sexual assault offences. The politician, who can't be named for legal reasons, has been released on bail pending further investigations. and he's been asked by the Chief Whip to stay away from Parliament. Meanwhile, Tory MP Michael Fabricant has apologised after he was accused of treating the arrest as a laughing matter by posting an inappropriate tweet.
A lot of people chose to take offence. I mean, as I said just now, I mean, the events are disgusting, and how can anyone make light of rape or sexual assault or any other similar event? But what I was making light of was that there'd been a huge amount of speculation over the last 24 hours about who this person might be. Oh, with hindsight, yeah, I shouldn't have done it. But you know what? One of the things I like to do when I do my tweets is mix in serious politics with a little bit of humour.
The Duke and Duchess of Cornwall have attended a ceremony to honour Canada's war dead in Ottawa. Prince Charles laid a wreath of poppies while Camilla left a bouquet. It's the second day of their tour, which is part of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, marking Queen Elizabeth's 7 decades on the throne. Rangers fans are gearing up for the Europa League final against Eintracht Frankfurt in Seville. The highly anticipated match kicks off at 8 p.m, with thousands of Rangers supporters travelling to Spain to watch the game. The last and only time the Scottish club has ever won a European trophy was half a century ago. Spanish authorities have deployed thousands of officers to police the city. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Michelle and Dewbs Co.
Thanks for that. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight. My panel, we've got journalist and author Harriet Sargent, rapper and podcaster Zuby, and political commentator Emma Burnell. You know, when I grow up, I want to be so successful that I get known as a single name. Zuby. That's it, just Zuby. I want to be known just as
I'm
Michelle.
so jealous.
Or Dewbs. Yeah, I know. We need to chat about how you've made that possible. A one-name intro. I like it, so I do. Right, also, you know the drill on Dewbs Co. It's not just about us here and our thoughts. It's about you at home as well. What is on your mind tonight? You can get in touch with me, GBViews at gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. You know already, we're on YouTube. We're everywhere, actually. TikTok, if you're young enough to be on that. I'm not, but if you are, we're on that. We're on the radio. We're everywhere. So wherever you are tonight, good evening to you, and you are very, very welcome. Now, our top story, you know, it's no surprise this, is it? Let's face it, because we've all known it's been coming, but we're all talking about inflation tonight. Prices are rising at their fastest rate in 40 years. And the cost of living crisis, of course, is biting, and I've got to say, it's going to bite a whole lot harder. Labour want an emergency budget, and the Citizens Advice Bureau says the warning lights could not be flashing brighter for the government to do something. Got to point out, though, that the estimates of what inflation was going to be was 9.1%. It's 9%, so we are actually slightly, and OK, you're all going to shout at me saying the 0.1% is irrelevant, but I'm just trying to put a positive spin on it, because I worry right now, you know, that a lot of people are really going to be worried and struggling and stressed, and I don't like to kind of make things worse or make people more anxious. Notwithstanding that, I'll start with you, Emma. You know, there's lots of kind of calls for the government to do more, emergency budgets. You know, the big buzzword of the day at the moment, or buzzwords plural, is windfall tax. Are the government doing enough?
No, in a word. The government have a few very basic responsibilities. They are to ensure that the population is kept in the best possible way. Now, that doesn't mean mansions and stuffing our mouths full of gold, but it means ensuring that we can all wake up in the morning knowing that we can feed our children and ourselves, and that there is work that we can go to in order to make that happen. Mm-hmm. Now, that latter part has been quite successful. We now have a scenario for the first time ever where there are fewer job vacancies, fewer people unemployed than there are job vacancies. Mm-hmm. So why is it that there are more people using food banks than ever before? Well, that's because the economy has been mismanaged drastically, and we are not in a situation whereby we have an economy that works for working people. And that's what we need. We need to have I'm not saying that we need to have some sort of communist scenario whereby the only jobs are run by the state. There is a space in between where we are now and where we could be, where there is enough government intervention to ensure that what they laughingly call a national living wage is actually something that ordinary people can live on.
Harriet, you was itching then. When she was talking, I could hear that intake of breath, which meant you were poised. What is it?
Well, the reason we are having the cost of living crisis is there's only one reason. That is because Putin has invaded Russia. I mean, 3/4 of the price increase has been because of oil and gas prices shooting up, and that's because we handed Putin control over our energy supplies, and we are now paying the price. The other huge thing is the shoot up in food. I mean, chicken and lamb have gone up 10%. Everything is going up because of something very basic, which is fertiliser. And the majority of fertiliser comes from Russia and Ukraine. And last year, fertiliser cost £120 a tonne. It's now costing £1,000 a tonne. That is why we have a cost of living crisis, and not because of anything in particular that the government has done. What the government does about it is another question.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's not quite just as simple as the Russian energy supply. I mean, of course, that is a huge, one of the most dominant contributing factors. But we've also had things like a global lockdown where all of these countries couldn't help themselves, locking themselves down for God knows how long. And then everybody then came out. So we have this lockdown at a similar time. You then pushed huge demand onto a supply kind of side of things, which raised prices. I think you've got a little bit of organisations blatantly profiteering. So I think there's a mixture, a melting pot of things that have come together to create this situation, and there'll be others as well. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the primary cause of inflation is always an increase in the money supply. And that is controlled by the central bank, which is controlled by the government.
What do you mean, quantitative easing? Are you saying that the government's printing too much money?
Printing too much money, and it's exacerbated by the lockdowns. If you shut down large swathes of the economy for a long, indefinite period of time, you stop people working. In fact, you pay people money to stay home and do nothing via furlough money. That leads to a devaluation of the currency. That's what caused it. It's the government intervention that causes inflation to begin with, and it can be exacerbated by other factors. But it's not that store owners and shopkeepers are randomly putting their prices up. What's happening is the value of your pound is decreasing.
I do think, though, that some store owners are just taking the mic a little bit. I still can't get over this. I whinge about this often, £4.50 for a sausage roll the other day. And OK, it's not about me and my sausage roll, but I looked at this kind of thing and I thought, come on now, I get it, prices have gone up a little bit. But the flaw in my plan was I'd already asked them to heat it up. So I had to pay. I thought, well, I can't get a heated, what am I going to do with this heated sausage roll? I can't give it back. But I do think, actually, that some organisations are taking the mickey a little bit. And a lot of it, they lost a lot of money during the lockdown, so some of them are trying to recoup.
They did. It's important to remember that this 9% figure, it's not a 9% figure for many products that we buy. If you are someone who works in farming or in manufacturing or in timber, the price of some things have gone up 40, 50, 100%.
The price of
lumber, the price of metal, the price of foods and so on. So what we are seeing with that 9%, if anything, is an understatement.
So we're talking about some of the causes, because I don't think it is as simple as just blaming the government for everything. And I also think you do. but then what would you say? But what would you say to Harriet's point then? Because Harriet's just made a very good point. You know, she's pointing out quite rightly that we've got a war on in Europe. You've got reliance upon Russian gas. You've got sanctions here, there, and everywhere. Like, that has an impact on inflation as well.
It does. It can exacerbate it, but inflation would happen regardless, and it's been happening regardless. Inflation always happens.
Also, I mean, the government are in charge of nothing else. They're in charge of how we manage our economy. What we made were several political decisions to ensure that we were not resilient when it came to shocks. Whether that shock was going to be, we didn't know it was going to be a global pandemic. We didn't know it was going to be Putin invading Russia, although we should have seen a lot more of that kind of thing coming down the track, and preparing our economy so that we were resilient enough for it. That we had a certain amount of self-reliance in terms of energy, that we weren't, for example, going, oh, we don't really like wind farms, they're not pretty, let's not build wind farms, let's rely on Russian gas instead.
But we as a country don't rely on Russian gas. We get a tiny percent of our energy from Russia, so that's not the situation for this country. By the way, Emma, I've just pointed out that one of the contributing factors to this is all of these, what I would now call ridiculous lockdown policies. And the Labour Party, actually, they were one of the ones that wanted us, they would probably, in my view, would still have us locked down today now. And you can't deny that actually
That's a strange view, Michelle, that isn't actually reflected by any policy held by the Labour Party.
He kept on, every time there was a break, he'd say, no, we must stay locked down.
I mean, I think we need to balance the fact that we would be in far greater economic straits if we'd lost more working people to COVID.
Well, excuse me,
the death of working-age people was a problem economically too. As well as
people
a big
were not
moral
dying in great
problem.
numbers from COVID. So, I mean, this was
we've all
not a
lost
problem.
people that we know, and not all of them were elderly and not all of them were vulnerable and frail.
Yeah, but my point is that the Labour Party were very, very keen on suppressing the economy for much longer. And you cannot deny that the suppression of the economy has contributed to this.
Of course it has. But this is what I'm saying. If we'd had a more resilient economy that wasn't based on these last-minute chains, on having everything run at absolute bare minimum, then it would have been easier to bounce back from lockdowns.
No, but wait a moment. We've had a COVID, which is a once in a generation or even in a century event, followed with only a few days brief pause, followed by a war in Europe, which again is a once in a century event. I mean, you cannot run an economy thinking you're going to have two once in centuries events back to back. I mean, that's just...
And Brexit
we've also had Brexit, which was a choice. We are choosing not to do anything about climate change, which is going to be yet another once in a century
What are you
event.
talking about? We're not doing anything about
climate change. We are, and also we all know about it. We didn't know about
we also
pandemic.
knew that Russia was having expansionary thoughts.
I think it's important to say that COVID did not cause this. The response to COVID, the governmental response to COVID is what is causing this economic fallout. This is the cost of lockdowns.
Well,
this was predictable. A lot of people were warning about this.
So you're agreeing with me?
People overviewed it. Absolutely.
Well, she's saying that as a nonsensical view.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the nonsensical view is the idea that Labour would still have us locked down, which is frankly nonsense.
Oh, come off it. How do you know?
Because I listen to what they say, Michelle.
As soon as we're talking about taking brave, bold steps into reopening the economy, people were desperate to try and attack Boris Johnson, saying that he was putting us at risk, he was this,
I mean,
he was that,
whether or not we should have locked down 1 week longer or 1 week shorter, it's not the same as saying that in May 2022, Labour still want us to be locked down. That's what I'm saying.
Let's move away from the Labour thing, because I think this is conjecture and it can't be proven either way.
Can I just bring out your point about, that it's not caused by COVID. I mean, at the moment, there's 500 boats trying to unload in Shanghai and load up in Shanghai. So you've got all these parts that we all desperately need in China that we are not being able to get because of the unbelievable lockdowns there.
The lockdowns, not COVID.
The government response.
It's the government response.
I agree with that.
Exactly.
I agree. I mean,
that's the Chinese government that is locked down, right? Exactly. So various governments around the world decided to lock down, and people panicking and full of fear decided it was a good idea. I said from day one, I thought the lockdowns personally were a terrible idea. I don't think they helped. I thought, and they have caused far more damage than any help they've done. They've even done studies showing that it didn't save lives, and the goal wasn't to. It was to buy time to get in PPE and to so-called flatten the curve, and everyone forgot about that. But this is the cost of it. These are the consequences that now need to be paid. You can't shut down the economy like that and keep putting trillions and trillions into the economy, paying people to stay at home, and think that there's not going to be any downstream repercussion in the future.
Well, we've been out and about talking to you guys, asking you. We've been in Mansfield, so we have asking you, what do you think about all of this inflation situation in terms of as well what the government are doing or not doing? Let's have a little listen to what you've had.
The shopping bills are going up and up and up, and my bank account's going down and down and down. It's going to be a point where I'm just going to run out of money with the way things are going at present. I don't understand why so many things have gone up. I heard that we've got so much gas we don't know what to do with it, yet the gas prices are going sky high. the oil prices just collapsed. Yet, even I picked up fuel last week and it was $1.60 a litre. It's now $1.62 a litre. I mean, it keeps going up the way it is. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to be able to afford to pay my mortgage.
Gas and electricity is the bugbear, absolutely. I should have gone up to 2/3 from what I used to pay. And the firm that I was with has gone bust, so you're on British Gas. And I don't know where they got the number from. I think they plucked it out of the air. Yeah, and food as well. Little bits, it keeps going up and up and up. And you notice it a little bit. We don't usually budget, but I am making shopping lists nowadays and trying to stick to it.
I've noticed the likes of electricity, the cost of that's going up. So I'm having to put about £50 a month on my gas and electric, and that's only just taking me through a monthly basis. Tenancy charges are going up from the local authorities, and it is all going up. I mean, the shop I work in a convenience store, and people are saying, "Oh, how come your sweets have gone up from £1 to £1.19?" And it's like, it's the cliche, but it's the cost of living.
Not a lot, really. I'm all right financially, so it's not bothering me. But what worries me is the stuff that you can't get in the shops. That's the main thing, that we're going to run out of the food. But apart from that, I'm all right.
You might have experienced cost of living crises in the past. You might have seen how we came out of that. What's the solution for this kind of a crisis?
I don't know. I don't watch the news. Doesn't interest me, really. You're asking the wrong person.
Well, there you go. We're asking the wrong person, he says. And this is the thing, you know, sometimes if things don't affect you, maybe we're in danger of saying, well, you know, I'm all right, Jack, it's not bothering me. But I do worry sometimes about, you know, I do worry that there's going to be some people that are really going to struggle. And I do find it very peculiar why Rishi, if I was Rishi Sunak, which luckily I'm not, I'd get rid of VAT, I'd press pause on this green agenda. You say we're all burying our heads in the sand about climate change. I think on the contrary, you can't go anywhere, do anything or see anything without net zero shoved down your face. We've got green levies everywhere, quite frankly, and I would say press pause on them.
Well, we've also just failed on the four most significant factors when it comes to fighting climate change internationally. Yeah.
Fine. So there you go. And if we've failed already, an extra year's not going to make a difference. You've just made my point for me. Press pause on these green levies. Help people. We're failing on these things anyway. So what difference does a little...
We're all going to die anyway, so let's die sooner.
Well, I don't think we're all going to die suddenly because of the climate change. I don't sit here going, oh, God, woe is me, I'm about to die because of the climate.
But we really ought to be a bit more woe is me when it comes to what we're doing to the planet.
Well, you know what? If everyone dies because they can't afford food or heating, then the planet is the least of their concerns. But what do you think when it comes to things like green levies? Because I personally would be pressing pause on them. Are you in my camp or are you with Emma? Thinks that there is no time to delay when it comes to things like the green levies. Let me know some of your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'll have lots of your feedback. Mark has been in touch about my sausage roll. I've got you talking about that sausage roll. Mark says, there's no way, Michelle, I would have paid £4 for a sausage roll. Mark, you weren't listening. It was not £4, it was £4.50. And I couldn't reject it because I'd already got them to heat it up for me. But yes, I agree with you that that is just a rip-off, isn't it? But tell me, by the way, have you been anywhere and seen anything where you've been charged a price and you sit there and you go, really? Even with this cost of living price, you're taking the mick. Tell me, get in touch with me. I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Coming up on The Mark Steyn Show, as Australian Prime Minister ScoMo joins the Western leaders who tackle children club, Alexandra Marshall will be taking him down after his public diss of her latest article. Well, one thing that isn't being tackled is the cost of living crisis. Jamie Jenkins will be looking at that, as well as Spain's draconian travel rules. Plus, Baroness Hoey will be on hand to discuss the proposed changes or even a total revocation of the Northern Ireland Protocol. All that and more on The Mark Steyn Show at 8 o'clock.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Just a reminder, by the way, as to who's keeping me company on my panel tonight: journalist and author Harriet Sargent, rapper and podcaster Zuby, and political commentator Emma Burnell. You guys have been getting in touch in your droves, actually, about that last topic when it comes to inflation, cost of living, the government and all that kind of stuff. Gary says, Michelle, the government has paid for everybody to sit on their backsides for 2 years, and unfortunately, it's payback time. Get on with it, people. That's Gary. He's not messing around. Stephen says, I would like the government to put the £20 uplift back on universal credit and stop deducting carers' allowance for full-time home carers. Someone else says, we should stop all foreign aid for a few years and get our own house in order. Sir John on Twitter. Are you really a Sir John? Tell me, let me know. He says, I want the government to do two things: scrap HS2, scrap foreign aid. He also goes on and says, reform the NHS and scrap the green levy.
I can't count.
Jackie, well, I've just realised I think I've said two things. I think I've conflated two things there. So I'll take that back, Sir John. You didn't say two and then go on to say four. I think you can count. It's me that can't. Jackie says, when it gets as bad as the 1970s, then I will worry. Peter says, in the 70s and 80s, inflation was much higher. You had no food banks, no national living wage, but we got on with it, and we are still here today to tell the tale. Yes, you are. Now, this week, moving on, this week we had, of course, didn't we, the shocking, it was awful, wasn't it, the racist killings in New York. You might have seen that. And that has once again shifted the focus on how do we tackle racism. Now, we're all familiar with the BLM organisations, the mantras, the movements, the slogans, whatever you want to call it. And one of these organisations today has had the spotlight firmly shone on it. It basically seems that the US BLM Foundation has spent millions of dollars that was supposed to be on kind of stopping racism. Instead, it seems to have spent it on things like mansions and family members. So, of course, we all have a shared objective here, which is fighting racism, tackling racism. But how do we go about it? Is the BLM way the right way? Now, Zuby, as the only black member of the panel, I'm sitting here thinking, what is the correct racial etiquette these days? Do I go to you first? Do I not go to you first? We've got a BBC show, Question Time. I remember the presenter had a similar kind of topic and went to the black member of the panel for his response first. And he turned around and said, you're coming to me because I'm a black person and that in itself is racist. So I've got to be honest, I'm sitting here getting myself in a muddle, thinking to myself, goodness me, if I go to you, am I racist? If I don't go to you first, am I racist? I don't know. So can I just start with you?
You can start with me, Michelle. That's all good. I know you're not racist, so no concerns here.
Your thoughts on all this?
Well, I feel vindicated because 2 years ago I said that this organization was a disingenuous scam, and it has proven itself to be a disingenuous scam. Yeah. The Black Lives Matter organization, this foundation in the USA, is a grift. They have received millions upon millions of dollars, I believe over $100 million, I think just in 2020, it was close to 100 million. So this organization has been capitalizing off of unfortunate deaths and tragedies and guilt-tripping people to send them lots of money and donations, which I believe most people think is going to go to a good cause. And instead, they are paying themselves 6- and 7-figure salaries. They're flying around in private jets. They bought a $6 million mansion. They've got over, I think, what was it? It's written here. They invested $32 million in stocks in 2020 with donation money. So this is an outright scam. So when we talk about Black Lives Matter, it's important to note that this is a semantically overloaded phrase intentionally. It refers to at least 3 different things. There is the statement, the basic phrase, Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. Everybody agrees, every decent human being around the world, across the political spectrum, agrees that Black Lives Matter because all human lives matter and should be treated with respect and dignity. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is the organization or organizations. I think in the USA, this one we're referring to is the primary Black Lives Matter organization. And a lot of people don't know that there is an organization with founders, with people who are receiving the money. It's a nonprofit, and they've been raking it in. They've been raking in the money over the past few years. And as we've seen here, they have been spending it on enriching themselves. And it's essentially money laundering. I think what they've done here is most likely illegal.
Yeah, so I have to say that they would say in their own defense that they've not done anything wrong.
Well, anyone can look at these articles, and I'm not going to, these numbers here. Paid the baby father $970,000 for creative services, paid the brother the $840,000 for security. Fellow director got $2.1 million. This is all just in 1 year.
Mm. But then, right? So Emma, the challenge is because every decent individual, which hopefully is the majority of people, want to see racism stopped and ended. And when something comes along, and I think this whole kind of Black Lives Matter, it is like now a complex web of you've got different charities, foundations. Mm-hmm. So for some people, it's a hashtag. For others, it's a slogan, movements, whatever. And it has all become this kind of ball of if we take BLM as, well, let me ask you this. Do you think even the BLM thing is tarnished? Is it still a trustworthy brand, if you like, when it comes to the fight against racism? Zuby's shaking his head.
It never was.
I think it's really important that you separate the concept of Black Lives Matter as a campaigning phrase, a positive campaigning phrase. The simple conception that Black Lives Matter and that saying separately Black Lives Matter is important when, particularly in America, and too much of the importation of some of this to the UK, where we have very different structural elements in racism, and it's completely different. And when we import an American attitude towards racial relations, it's actually very unhelpful because we have very different struggles and different attitudes. From what is an organisation that does not, on the surface and from these stories, appear to be well managed or managed in such a way that is doing what it is set up or supposedly set up to do. I think it's really, really important that we don't lose sight of the important conception of what Black Lives Matter should be about from the organisational failures. And this is something that happens, and I'm somebody who works a lot with the third sector, the voluntary sector, and campaigning organisations to think about how campaigning can be done well. And the best way of campaigning is to put yourself out of business. If you can get to a point where what your charitable objective is achieved, then you should be putting yourself out of business.
Well, unless you Stonewall, but that's a whole different topic.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
Unfortunately, an awful lot of time what happens is that the organisations become too big to put themselves out of business, and their objectives snowball and they go in completely different directions, or they become untouchable, ungovernable. The individuals and the behaviours of an organisation become inseparable from the campaign aims of an organisation. And actually those two things should be very separate. And any good campaigning organisation should be as self-critical as possible rather than self-defensive as possible. Because it's only by continually saying, are we doing this as well as possible? Are we putting ourselves out of business? That you can actually achieve a campaign goals and aims rather than maintaining an organisation.
I'm keen to come back on that, but Harriet, I'm conscious you've not come in. What's your thoughts?
Well, I would think this is something that's been happening more and more, and it is very sad. I mean, we've seen this with identity politics, exactly the same thing. At the beginning, every right-minded person believes, Black Lives Matter and that trans men and women should have equal everything with everybody else. And yet both have been taken over in the same way and actually used to cause division and hatred and violence. And both, I think, have been run almost as extortion rackets.
Yes.
That we have to pay lip service, otherwise, you're going to lose your reputation, you're going to lose your career. And it's very, very sad the way this has happened, and it's actually promoted, great distress and not brought about the good things that we were led to expect it would.
Yeah, because Zubi, one of the things that I find, I don't like it actually, is being told, right, unless you take your Instagram and put a black square on this time and this day and leave it there, then you are a racist. And as for you, unless you take the knee at all your football matches, your Formula One, whatever it is, then you're a racist as well. And I really reject that, actually. Why are you scrunching your face up? You don't think that happens?
I think there's a spectrum here, and we're talking about two very extreme ends of it. And I actually think most of it exists in the middle of that spectrum. On the taking of the knee, I think it should be an individual's choice to do it. But I think when people do it, some of the criticism they face is as extreme as some of the criticism that those who criticise them for doing it face. And I don't think either of those is helpful to the ultimate aim.
I think something
it's perfectly fair for a Premiership footballer to say, I'm going to take the knee because I feel solidarity and I feel like it's really important that I do this. And they shouldn't be penalised for that. Then other people can say, that's not my choice, and I shouldn't be penalised for that either.
Yeah.
Zubi?
I think it's very clear, even from this conversation, and all the conversations, every time BLM comes up, is that it is divisive. It's divisive. This is stoking racial tension, not just in the I mean, it's crazy it's been imported to the UK, but in the USA, it's exactly the same. You had cities on fire in 2020. There was so much tension. Multiple people got killed. Over 20 people got killed in the BLM protests and riots in 2020. So this started from one black man getting killed, and then you've got another few dozen getting killed.
But Zubi, some of these organisations, they'll say to you, but Zubi, you are oppressed, and we're here to help you.
I'm not oppressed. They're not there to help me, and they're not helping me. They're not helping black people in general. They are helping themselves. The way you stop racism is by people not being racist. It's not by calling everyone racist. It's not by making false and unkind accusations against everyone. It's not about virtue signaling and putting up hashtags and black squares and kneeling down. It's about simply treating people as equals. That's all it takes.
And do you buy into, in this day and age, because there is a suggestion that in the here and now, in this day and age, that many aspects of society, whether it's institutions or whatever, are fundamentally racist. Do you think that that is the case in today's society?
I don't think it's the case, and I don't think it's useful. These terms, systemic, structural, institutional racism, they're popular because they're these apparitions, they're these ghosts where you never need to define anything or be precise. You just say, oh, the system is racist, the institution's racist. You can just throw it out there and people just nod and cheer, but you can't fix a problem like that. If you want to deal with individual instances of racism, you need to be able to identify them, highlight them, and then you can deal with that individual issue. If you just say, oh, the whole system, the whole country, top to down, is racist, then that doesn't help anyone apart from the activists.
Yeah, because it's almost what constitutes, or what people want to say constitutes racism. It's like the bar is getting lower, or seems to be getting lower and lower. Like the example I just gave to you, a presenter going to the black person on the panel first, which I would have thought actually was a respect thing, because if anyone's likely to have a lived experience, as the phrase is, more so on this topic, it would be you rather than anyone else. The fact that I've even got to sit there for a moment and think, oh God, should I be going to you first, or shouldn't I be going to that first?
And this shows what this has all done, because I imagine a few years ago, that wouldn't even have crossed your mind.
I would have come to you out of a respect thing.
It wouldn't have crossed your mind, but they've created this whole context where people don't even know what they can do. They feel uncomfortable. They've been teaching people, from children to adults, that they've all got this inherent racism in them, and that we shouldn't be colorblind and everyone should be seeing color and all of that. And it's regressive. It's not progressive at all. It's moving people backwards.
What worries me, and I have family members of many different colors, I think it's so high. I think it's exactly what Michelle and Zubi were just saying. I think there are two things that concern me. One is this promotion that there is one black way of thinking about these things. And I think that in itself is a really problematic thing to think, because it just so that, you know, the idea that the billions of people across the world that are of a different race have one mindset is in itself, for me, racially simplistic, in a ridiculous way. And I do, when I'm thinking about change and how change happens, I think the problem we have is now we are too worried to question and ask questions. We're worried to say, is this the right thing to do? And I don't know how else you learn how not to do bad things than by saying, is this the right thing to do? Now, I struggle, and I know that I don't always get things right, but I hope that I come from a place where when I've got something wrong, I can learn from that, rather than just simply either retreating into my own shell and saying, well, I'm not interested in learning, or being told you can never learn and you are just wrong. And we've got to find that common ground, that happy medium space where we can learn together.
I think it just comes from people being decent and charitable and empathetic, right? I think we live in this time where people like to use all of these different topics as weapons, right? People want to be able to jump in, and I can understand why some people revel in it, because it's quite easy to do. You see this in some of the modern branches of feminism. You're seeing this with people who are doing it with race. People did it with the whole COVID situation, right? Anyone who dissents is anti-science and an anti-vaxxer and hates people and wants to kill grandma and so on.
So you make money from it. I mean,
make
identity
money off it.
politics, Stonewall have made so much money. And it's, when you follow the money, it's really quite interesting who's making money from it and how they're making money from it.
I've got to say, Zubi, there's an awful lot of love, respect. A few people saying they think they do love you, actually.
There's a cue, ladies.
There's a lot of love for you coming through, because I think that people, it's refreshing to hear an alternate perspective on this, because for a very long time you have been told, and I do stand by what I've just said, you have been essentially told, if you don't change your Instagram black, then you're a racist. If you don't take the knee, you're a racist. And it's all well and good you say, oh yeah, well, you can choose to take the knee. Yeah, of course you can choose what you do. But if you choose not to do that for your own personal reasons, then you will be vilified by many in society. So lots of people, lots of feedback on this last topic. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be going through some of that feedback. And I also want to talk to you about a slightly different topic. Is it the government's responsibility to help you lose weight? Love that and more in a couple of minutes.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, why Brits cannot afford to forget the lockdown zealotry of politicians like Jeremy Hunt, who have leadership ambitions. Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill discusses that topic with me, plus esteemed broadcaster Sue Cook gives evidence to my lockdown inquiry on the media's pandemic scaremongering. And it's a night of unfiltered opinion from top US journalist Megyn Kelly, columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddell, and my superstar panel. One of the most celebrated British political journalists of our time, John Sargent, entrepreneur and activist Adam Brooks, and broadcaster Ashley James. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Quick reminder as to who's keeping me company tonight. Journalist and author Harriet Sargent, rapper and podcaster Zuby, and political commentator Emma Burnell. Now, I was just about to talk about weight loss and whether or not it's your responsibility to lose weight or the government's. Is Boris Johnson really responsible for your waistline? I'm going to come to that in just a second. But when I was in the break, I was just asking you, Zuby, because I was fascinated by that last conversation. Lots of response, I can tell you, coming through. Lots of people thankful, actually, for the conversation that we're just having. And I was saying to you, I get a sense that actually there is an expectation on a black person to feel oppressed. So I was wondering how the response that you get, because I'm listening to you and you're pushing back on lots of this narrative, and I wonder the kind of response that you get to some of the things that you say.
Yeah.
From the black community, I mean.
Well, it happens from all sides. First of all, your observation is spot on. And I'd say it's actually a bigger problem in the USA than it is here in the UK. One thing I'm very grateful about here in the UK is that society in general is less racialized. And these sort of conversations about race and the conflict and some of the negative history and all of that there's not so much of a focus on it here in the UK. But absolutely, we live in this day and age, and it's been the case this has been going on for decades, honestly, where as a black person, whether you're in the UK or in the US or many other places, you are supposed to embrace this victimhood mindset, right? You are supposed to internalize it. Some people will even put this into their children, which I think is doing a massive disservice to them. And I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think it's positive. I don't think it's helpful. As a society and as someone who is an individual who just loves humanity and grew up around all kinds of different people, I just look at people as individuals, and everyone is so multifaceted. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, advantages, disadvantages. Each person is a unique individual, whether you are a black person, a white person, a brown person. It's such a base and silly label for us to even be differentiating society by. That's always been the case, which is why racism itself is such a dumb concept. but it's also why it's really silly how we have this sort of new form of woke neo-racism, as I call it, which is forcing people back into thinking in this mindset of it being white people and everybody else. You know, instead of colored people, we'll now call them people of color, and now everything is all good. And it's just like, look, that's not how I see the world. It's not how I see society. And I don't think promoting a victim mindset and mentality for anybody is helpful to them. I think it does them a massive disservice.
Well, there you go. Fascinating stuff. I've got to say, I could literally sit and talk to you about this topic all night long. But unfortunately, for time reasons, that is not possible. Lots and lots, and I'm telling you, lots of support for what you're saying coming in thick and fast on Twitter and on the email, Zuby. Right, let me move on briefly to another topic, if I may. Since last year, the government, there was a fund awarded essentially last year of £100 million to help with weight loss programmes. Of that, £30 million has been spent by councils to fund said initiatives. But get this, only 220 people so far have managed to keep their weight off. Now, by my crass calculations, that's about £136,000 per person. £136,000 to lose 5% of your body. I'd do it for half that, actually. Emma, where do you start? Is it Boris Johnson's responsibility to help you or anyone else lose weight?
Well, we used the term lived experience earlier. Nobody can talk about this topic with more lived experience than I can. Your more eagle-eyed viewers will notice that I've not yet hit my weight loss target, but those who've seen me on the television over the years will know that I've lost half my body weight. I used to be 25.
You gave us a picture, didn't you? Have we got this picture? You said we could use a picture of you?
I did. I don't think they asked for it, but I'm very happy to share it whenever you want because I'm very proud of what I've done.
Yeah.
Now, the government gave me a kickstart with that. The NHS invested in me. I had gastric sleeve surgery, which meant that I lost 7 stone very quickly, over a year.
7 stone?
I lost 7 stone over a year, and then I started, because the stomach is a muscle, and because...
Can I ask a really personal question?
Of course.
If it's too personal, tell
Michelle,
me
you know me. There's nothing I don't share.
7 stone is pretty much me in a little bit. That is a huge weight loss. So what?
But I've lost much more than that.
But how? This I don't want to be offensive, so I'm trying to pick my words
please
carefully.
say whatever you need to say.
How did you get as big as that in the first place?
The thing about being very overweight, I started gaining weight when I started being sexy, basically.
Right.
I opted out of the sexual rat race, essentially. So about 14, I started piling on the pounds. And I piled on the pounds and I piled on the pounds and I got miserable because I was fat and I ate because I was miserable and I got fat because I ate. And it's a horrible, horrible, vicious cycle that people who think it's really helpful to shout at you on the bus, oh, you're really fat. It's like, my God, so I am. I'd never noticed. That's why my back hurts constantly. That horrible, vicious cycle, getting to that state happens in your head. It happens to your body, but it happens in your head. And that's what I needed to break, and that's what the government's Head Start gave me. Now, I had to do...
What do you mean the government's Head Start?
Well, the investment, the NHS investment in deciding to intervene in my health at that point...
But you must have made your own decision.
It was my decision, but the NHS offered me the surgery and I chose to take it.
Right.
I then chose to run with it. Because the stomach's a muscle, I started putting weight back on a little bit, and I was like, absolutely not happening. So I then went to, I don't know if I'm allowed to name the brand, but it was one of your slimming club type things. And I've lost further 6 stone with them. So I've lost 12.5 stone.
That is incredible, actually.
And I've got 2.5 to go. And I know, guys, you're all screaming, you're still a fat woman. I know.
Well, I've got a lot of respect, actually, because I imagine I think I've got a very fast metabolism. I think we're quite lucky. But to lose that amount of weight and to keep going, I think it's extraordinary. Yeah. So good for you. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to show that picture. But Harriet, where do you stand on this?
Well, I'm addicted to cake, so I'm incredibly sympathetic with putting weight on. I think that if you look at... It's quite interesting. If you look at photos from the 1950s, everybody's slim. And you kind of think, well, why is it that we have just put on weight and put on weight? I do think that it's incredibly difficult now to lose weight because a lot of these fast foods have deliberately put together a taste, you know, the sugar and the fat to get us addicted. I mean, they've done this with a great deal of thought. And so getting off it is horrendously hard, which, I mean, you have obviously succeeded, but it is horrendously hard because I read it's, you know, it's almost as difficult as coming off heroin.
Well, the problem is, and I've said this in articles that I've written about it, you would not ask an alcoholic to drink a quarter of vodka a day to stay alive.
Yeah.
But I have to eat every day. And if my addiction is overeating, managing that whilst also having to have that intake of food, which of course I have to have, I mean, you know, let's not be stupid about this, that is where that's the really hard part, because there's no going cold turkey on this.
So you saw your, or I don't know if you do still, or past tense, present tense, I don't know. So you would see your food consumption as an illness?
I mean, I don't know if illness is exactly the right word. It's...
Compulsion?
It was compulsion, absolutely. And it was also, let's not be dumb about this, when you are as unhappy as I was, you will choose something that will give you a quick boost. And something that gave me a quick boost was food.
I think the truth is that it all starts in the mind.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
It all starts in the mind. And I think conversations like this are actually really important because I think due to the sensitive nature of the issue, people like to dance around it, people like to skirt around it. I love the fact that, firstly, congrats on that weight loss.
Yeah, it's great.
That is phenomenal. I love to hear those stories. And the truth is, it does come down ultimately to personal responsibility. There's all this talk about the government and the public, and of course there's the advertising industry and the food industry, and all of that plays a role in the environment. But the truth is that you cannot eat nor exercise for anybody else. So an individual has to make that personal decision that they want to make a change, and that is always going to be the starting point. If someone does not want to commit to that change, then
nothing and no one can help them. Fascinating stuff. Right, I have just noticed the time. I could honestly continue this conversation for a very, very long time. Guys on my panel, thank you very much for your honesty, your openness, your vulnerabilities as well. We much appreciate it. And thank you as well at home for your interaction tonight. Nigel, by the way, we started off by talking about the government. And one of my viewers, just before I hand over to Nigel Farage, one of my viewers, another Nigel, says, Michelle, I know what we should do with the government. Send them all off to Rwanda. Anyway, Nigel Farage, you are up in just a few minutes. What have you got coming up?
It's the economy, stupid, as inflation rockets another 2% in the last month. It's easy to criticise the government, but do Labour actually have the answers? We'll debate that. We'll look at the WHO, their big World Assembly coming up at the weekend. Does it pose a threat to our sovereignty? We'll be joined by a Ukrainian member of Parliament. We'll ask what's really going on in Mariupol. But before all of that, let's get the weather.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. The threat of intense thunderstorms across southern and southeastern parts of the UK during the next few hours. Showers generally across many northern and western parts of the country as well, as a weather front moves in from the Atlantic. That's going to bring some more general rain and gusty winds to Northern Ireland and western Scotland during the night time. But ahead of it, that's where we've got the intense thunderstorms, initially the south coast, extending then into southeast and eastern parts of England overnight. Frequent lightning and hail possible in places, the risk of some very heavy rain. Also the risk of wet and windy weather for western and northern Scotland, Northern Ireland, but much of the unsettled weather out of the way for the start of Thursday. Clear spells to begin, temperatures around 10 to 13 degrees. Further showers perhaps for the south and southeast first thing, and there'll be more showers for western Scotland, Northern Ireland during the day, perhaps some longer spells of rain in places. Quite breezy towards the far northwest. Otherwise, for the vast majority by the afternoon, sunny spells, light winds and feeling pleasant enough with temperatures in Cardiff 19, London 23, Glasgow 20. Then into Thursday night, we're going to see clear spells at first. Further showers, I think, for western Scotland and Northern Ireland at times. Keen breeze here. Then thickening cloud by the end of the night across the southern half of the country, and some outbreaks of rain or showers start to move up from the continent. 12 or 13 in the south, 9 to 11 for Scotland and Northern Ireland. as we begin Friday. And Friday starts off rather cloudy, I think, for many, and there's the threat of some intense thunderstorms getting quite close to the southeast during Friday morning and early afternoon. Most likely at the moment they stay just far away from the southeast. But Friday's a generally unsettled day with rain or showers for many. More settled on Saturday with some sunshine.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.